Welcome to the deep dive. You sent us your sources, and we're here to extract the core insights for you.
That's right.
Today, at your request, we're plunging into the epic world of the Mahabharata. We've got a really fascinating selection of excerpts here.
Exactly. And these aren't just, simple stories. They are packed, absolutely packed with enduring wisdom and, frankly, some very complex characters.
Right.
So our mission today is to navigate this huge text and bring you the most compelling, the most relevant takeaways. Think of it as unlocking the essential knowledge from this ancient masterpiece.
Consider this your, let's say, shortcut to understanding some of the Mahabharata's biggest questions and dramas.
Yeah.
And the sources you sent us today are incredibly diverse. They range from, conflicts between gods and the scheming of royalty, all the way to these really profound explorations of dharma, the enigma of death, and that ever-present quest for liberation.
What's truly captivating, I think, is just the sheer range of experience, human and divine, that's captured in these selections you've given us.
Yeah.
We'll see divine intervention, right in the middle of earthly affairs. We'll see heroes grappling with, frankly, impossible moral choices. There are some really shrewd insights into strategy, diplomacy, and, of course, these timeless reflections on just what it means to be human. You should expect some unexpected turns and some pretty profound moments.
Absolutely. We'll be uncovering acts of, deception right alongside moments of deep wisdom, and also the kind of stubbornness, that can steer even the mightiest towards tragedy.
That's a good way to put it.
Okay, so let's dive right in. We start with a celestial conflict, one where even a god experiences fear.
Right. We begin with Indra, king of the gods, facing this character, Vritrasura. Now, Indra wants Vritrasura gone. He wants to eliminate him. But he's paralyzed by a very specific fear, Brahmahatya. This is the immense sin of killing someone with Brahmana lineage, which Vritrasura has. So this isn't just, good versus evil.
Right, it's got these heavy spiritual strings attached for Indra. And here's where it gets really interesting, I think. Instead of just another cosmic smackdown, the gods and the sages, they try something different.
Yeah, they do.
They approach Vritrasura not with threats, but with praise. They actually praise his power. It's a surprisingly diplomatic move, especially for, the heavenly realms.
It is. And one sage gives a particularly compelling reason for this. He points out that the ongoing conflict between Indra and Vritrasura, it's stretched across, vast ages.
Wow.
And it's inflicted devastating consequences on everyone, gods, demons, humans, you name it. It's a very pragmatic look at the cost of endless war.
So it's not just about these two figures duking it out. It's having real, tangible negative effects across the whole cosmos.
Exactly.
And this realization leads them to plead for a truce. The well-being of all creation kind of becomes the priority, pushing Vritrasura to maybe consider a lasting peace with Indra. It really shows how even these divine conflicts have to eventually reckon with their real-world impact.
Precisely. The focus shifts, doesn't it? From just winning at any cost to thinking about the greater good, this yearning for balance. And it sets a fascinating precedent for later stories where the ethics of conflict are constantly being examined.
Ethics and conflict. Yeah, a thread we'll definitely pick up again. Speaking of complex situations, our next excerpt throws us into the story of Nahusha and Indrani. This is a classic tale of power going to someone's head big time.
This narrative starts with Nahusha, who was actually a virtuous king. And through his merits, he temporarily gets Indra's throne in heaven.
Wow, quite the promotion.
Right. But, as often happens, this newfound power corrupts him. Nahusha becomes more and more fixated on, sensual indulgence.
And his desires land squarely on Indrani, who is Indra's wife. You can imagine that doesn't go over well.
Not at all.
And Indrani, understandably, seeks protection.
She runs to Brihaspati, the spiritual guide of the gods. Meanwhile, the gods themselves are in a really tricky spot.
Yeah.
They recognize Nahusha's immense power, even if it's temporary, and they actually express their fear of him. There's this real sense of unease, shaking up the celestial hierarchy.
It's a stark picture, isn't it? How even a mortal elevated like that can scare the actual gods. And Brihaspati steps in to protect Indrani.
Yes, Brihaspati reassures her and comes up with a plan. He shelters her and advises her to basically ask Nahusha for a postponement. Just buy some time.
Ah, a clever tactic. Hit the pause button on his advances. And surprisingly, Nahusha agrees to this delay.
He does. Maybe it was arrogance, thinking, she couldn't escape him eventually, or maybe he just underestimated her resolve.
His pride probably played a huge part.
Almost certainly. So after this, Indrani performs a purification ritual and prays to the goddess Raksha, asking for divine help.
And the divine help comes through. Indrani is eventually reunited with Indra thanks to Raksha stepping in. It really underlines that theme in the epic of seeking divine aid in a crisis.
It does. And after this reunion, our excerpts mention a crucial discussion between Brahaspati and Agni, the fire god. The details aren't fully spelled out here, but it implies they're strategizing.
Right, about how to restore order, get Indra back on the throne properly.
Exactly. And Brihaspati's praise for both Agni and Indra suggests their combined efforts were key to navigating this whole tricky situation and resolving the crisis.
Makes sense.
The narrative then moves to a deliberation involving Brihaspati, the Lokapalas, those are the guardians of the cardinal directions, and Indra himself. They're discussing how to permanently remove Nahusha. The consensus is clear. His abuse of power just can't stand.
Which brings us to Agastya's account of Nahusha's ultimate downfall. And this wasn't like a gentle resignation. It was a hard fall from grace.
Oh, absolutely. Agastya details how Nahusha's pride, his transgressions, led straight to his expulsion from heaven. And a particularly striking part of this is the suffering he inflicted on revered sages.
The ones forced to carry his palanquin.
Exactly. Imagine that. Wise sages forced to carry this power-mad king. It's such a potent image of authority being abused.
Incredible. And they don't just take it silently, do they?
No, they challenge him. They question his authority, his disrespectful treatment. And this act, disrespecting those who deserve reverence, ultimately seals his fate. It's a powerful reminder that even temporary power, when used unjustly and arrogantly, leads to a devastating collapse.
It certainly is. Wow. Okay, so from these celestial and quasi-celestial power struggles, our sources also offer some really profound insights into war and diplomacy, but on a more human scale.
Yes, these excerpts present a strong argument against even wanting conflict, specifically thinking about the tension building between the Kauravas and Pandavas. The emphasis is clearly on finding solutions through peace, through understanding.
The text actually says explicitly that war inevitably breeds injustice on both sides. There are no truly clean victories when violence erupts. That message feels incredibly relevant today, doesn't it?
It really does. It highlights that universal truth. The consequences of war are rarely neat or morally simple.
Following this push for peace, we meet Sanjaya, who's known for being impartial, right? He meets with Krishna and the Pandavas.
Yes. And this encounter is likely about dialogue, about trying to understand both sides before things escalate further.
We also get a glimpse of some kind of divine vision happening in the Kaurava assembly, something that really should have served as a potent warning.
It should have.
And Vidura, always the voice of wisdom, offers his counsel, begging the Kauravas to avoid war.
But sadly, and this is a recurring theme, Vidura's wisdom is largely ignored by Duryodhana. It highlights that tragedy of ignoring sound advice rooted in Dharma, doesn't it?
It really does. The dire consequences are laid out. Interestingly, our sources also note something about devotional offerings.
Yes, that even simple things, leaves, flowers, fruit, water offered with devotion are accepted by the divine.
It highlights the importance of sincerity, doesn't it? Pure intention.
Exactly. Speaks volumes about the nature of the divine in this epic. It's accessible through genuine devotion, not just through, big showy displays or wealth.
Right. As the shadow of war gets longer, we see this impending clash between two huge figures, Bhishma and Arjuna. That's gotta be poignant, the student facing his grandsire, both tangled in loyalty and duty.
It's deeply poignant. And the Pandavas, with Krishna, are shown attending to Bhishma. Maybe seeking blessings, maybe one last attempt at peace.
And then we get Krishna's powerful promise to Arjuna.
Yes, to be his charioteer, to fulfill his commands. This signifies Krishna's unwavering support to the Pandavas, his deep commitment to Arjuna. It's a massive moment, solidifying their divine alliance.
You can feel the weight of it.
And Vaishnapayana wraps up this section by describing Arjuna's joy, his elation, hearing this promise and returning to Yudhishthira. It emphasizes this renewed hope, this determination in the Pandava camp, knowing they have divine backing.
Okay, so from these grand moments, we pivot to something that seems, well, pretty shady. The episode with Indra and the carpenter. This feels like a jarring contrast after all the talk about righteousness.
It is jarring. This narrative shows Indra, the same king who sought a truce earlier, now disguised as a carpenter, approaching Vritrasura's dead body.
Okay.
And his immediate order to this carpenter is stark unsettling. Dismember the corpse. Cut it into 3 parts.
Wow, that's brutal. And disrespectful to a defeated enemy, the carpenter must have been hesitant.
He was. He voices reluctance, mentioning the body's size, his axe maybe not being sharp enough. But his concerns run deeper than just practicalities.
He brings up the ethics, right? The sin involved.
Exactly. He worries about the sin of essentially harming a descendant of a rishi. He highlights the potential spiritual blowback for himself, and he pointedly notes that Indra doesn't seem worried about sin at all.
That contrast is stark. The mortal worried about dharma, the gods seemingly not.
It's very telling. Indra, though, doesn't debate morality. He just pulls rank. Forcefully asserts he's the king of the gods, demands immediate obedience. It's raw power overriding ethics.
Power politics, pure and simple. Does he even try to justify it?
He does offer justification, though. As you said, it sounds rather self-serving. He claims Vritrasura was this huge enemy killed via a specific boon, so it was necessary.
Right.
And he says he intends to atone for the sin later. But, this justification doesn't really wash away the moral ambiguity, especially given the carpenter's deep unease. It raises those tough questions about ends justifying means, even for the gods.
Absolutely. It forces you to grapple with the complexities of dharma and what even divine beings might rationalize. Okay, let's shift back to the human drama between the Kauravas and Pandavas, starting with Bhishma constantly trying to counsel Duryodhana.
Bhishma, the grandsire, the elder statesman, repeatedly warns Duryodhana. He reminds him of the Pandavas' legitimate claim, the immense suffering they've already endured. He's consistently trying to be that moral compass, pointing Duryodhana towards dharma.
He even gives this assessment of Arjuna's skill, saying he could take on Indra himself in battle. That alone should have made Duryodhana think twice, right? Highlighting the sheer power he's up against.
You'd think so. Bhishma's advice is crystal clear. Duryodhana must avoid the real kind of righteousness.
Yeah.
Let the Pandavas live peacefully, acknowledge their rights. He sees the catastrophe coming if Duryodhana keeps ignoring this.
And Bhishma even predicts the Pandavas will absolutely go to war if Dharma keeps being trampled. It's just tragic foreshadowing.
And adding another layer here is Bhishma's sharp put-downs of Karna's boasting. Karna, always loyal to Duryodhana, loves to brag about his skills. But Bhishma, with his experience, just cuts through it. He highlights Karna's limits, especially compared to Arjuna.
So even within Duryodhana's inner circle, these warnings were being sounded. But they just fell on deaf ears, blinded by arrogance.
Pretty much.
Yeah.
Which leads us nicely into Vidura's insights and his sobering take on Duryodhana's allies.
Vidura, another voice of reason in that court.
Absolutely. He reflects on the dice game, that pivotal moment that really escalated everything. He saw the Kauravas' doom coming precisely because Duryodhana refused to listen to any wise counsel, including his own. It's a textbook case of self-inflicted disaster.
Vidura paints a grim picture of Duryodhana's chosen buddies, Dushasana, Shakuni, Karna. He says Duryodhana is just infatuated with them.
Yes, suggesting blind loyalty and personal attachment are seriously clouding his judgment, leading him down this dangerous path.
And Vidura is particularly skeptical about Karna beating Arjuna, isn't he?
Deeply skeptical. He reminds Duryodhana of past fights, where Karna basically failed to back up the Kauravas effectively. This isn't just opinion, it's based on history, on Karna's actual track record.
And Vidura even says that Drona and Bhishma know this too, that Karna's boasts don't always match his performance against someone like Arjuna.
He does. It really underscores how isolated Duryodhana is becoming, even in his own court, clinging to this misplaced confidence.
Yeah, surrounding himself with yes men instead of wise counsel. A classic recipe for failure.
Indeed. Now, let's consider Krishna's perspective on all this.
Ah, Krishna. The divine strategist. What's his take?
He makes this really insightful observation. He points out that the very army Duryodhana now commands used to be loyal to the Pandavas because people genuinely liked them.
Right.
If Duryodhana had just acted justly, with integrity, that support would have stayed with him.
He actively alienated potential allies.
Exactly. He notes powerful rulers like Virata and others the Kauravas had previously beaten probably would have sided with the Pandavas if Duryodhana hadn't been so unrighteous. His persistent paroke directly cost him allies and strengthened his enemies.
Then Krishna asks Arjuna a really fundamental ethical question, doesn't he?
He does. He asks, what possible joy, what fulfillment could come from killing revered elders, respected warriors? It's a direct challenge to the core motivations for war.
It cuts deep.
And he follows it up by reminding Arjuna about the inescapable facts of life, old age, death. These happen regardless of earthly kingdoms won through violence.
So, winning a kingdom through bloodshed doesn't change the fundamental human condition.
Precisely. So Krishna urges Arjuna to step back from war, emphasizing its ultimate futility when faced with life's inevitable end. He consistently steers the conversation towards dharma, long-term consequences, urging Arjuna to think beyond immediate gains.
A powerful perspective. Okay, next up is Sanjaya reporting on Duryodhana's conduct.
Yes, Sandhya, with his divine vision, gives this stark, damning assessment of the Kauravas' morality. He says flat out, they are deeply immersed in tancha, unrighteousness, while being fundamentally ignorant of dharma, true duty. It's a profound indictment.
Wow. He also implicates Dhritarashtra, doesn't he? Saying he's influenced by his blind love for his sons.
He does. He asserts Dhritarashtra is actively trying to unjustly grab the Pandavas' ancestral kingdom. It really highlights the destructive power of that kind of blind attachment when it overrides justice.
And when Dhritarashtra asks Sanjaya about Yudhishthira's well-being,
Sanjaya's reply is very telling. He emphasizes Yudhishthira's unwavering righteousness, his commitment to dharma, and his completely legitimate desire to reclaim what's rightfully his. It's such a clear contrast to the Kauravas' actions.
a vivid picture. One side clinging to justice, the other blinded by greed. Okay, let's dig into some of the core wisdom from these excerpts. Forgiveness, dharma, avoiding negative traits.
Right. These verses really extol forgiveness. It's presented not as weakness, but actually as a potent quality of the strong. Forgiveness, it says, can achieve everything and bring lasting peace. It's a powerful tool.
There's that analogy, too, about fire.
Yes, like a fire burning itself out in a barren place, the unforgiving person becomes self-destructive. It harms them and everyone around them, really shows the corrosive nature of resentment.
And then the four supreme principles.
Dharma is the highest good, forgiveness is ultimate peace, wisdom is supreme contentment, and non-violence is the source of happiness. These are presented as the bedrock of a virtuous life.
The text also calls out two types of Adam, or base individuals.
Yes, the inactive householder who neglects duties, and the greedy mendicant who's not genuinely spiritual. It's a critique of shirking responsibility or faking spirituality for gain.
And specific harmful actions are listed, too.
Seizing wealth unjustly, adultery, harsh speech, all seen as detrimental, creating negative karma.
Then the really stark warning about the three gates of hell.
Lust, anger, and greed.
Yeah.
The text says abandon them completely, underscores their destructive power.
And overcoming these internal enemies is seen as a greater victory than gaining kingdoms or sons.
Exactly. It highlights that true victory is self-mastery.
There's also specific advice for kings, warning against 7 flaws that lead to ruin.
Yes, emphasizing the responsibilities and dangers of power, the need for virtuous leadership.
And finally, those 8 signs of a person nearing destruction, starting with envy of the learned.
A powerful cautionary tale shows the internal decay that comes before the external collapse and the importance of humility, respecting knowledge.
Potent stuff. Timeless guidance on living with integrity, and clear warnings about straying from the path. Okay, next segment takes us back to Vidura counseling the anxious king Dhritarashtra.
Right. Dhritarashtra is deeply worried about the coming war, the potential devastation. He begs Vidura for counsel, hoping for some path that benefits both his sons and the Pandavas. He really wants to know what Yudhishthira is planning.
And Vidura's response is typically direct.
Absolutely. He asserts that truthfulness is the highest dharma. It has the power to cleanse. It's fundamental.
He also talks about the consequences of lying, differentiating based on what the lie is for.
Yes, lying for gold harms future generations. But lying for land or women, that brings utter ruin. The consequences are severe.
Vidura also brings up Narada's judgment in a dispute to make a point.
About the mother being superior. It emphasizes the value of nurturing life-giving principles in society.
Then he draws that contrast between living selfishly and living with detachment.
Right. Those driven by constant desire versus those dedicated to righteous conduct, selfless action. He stresses that true happiness comes not from chasing pleasure, but from detachment and virtue.
And he points out that even surrounded by luxury, if you've got inner turmoil, you're unhappy.
Exactly. True peace comes from within, not from external stuff.
And the segment concludes with that powerful idea. True liberation isn't about conquering external enemies,
but conquering the self. Your own inner demons, attachments, ego, self-mastery is the ultimate path. A really compelling message.
From Vidura's practical wisdom, we now shift to something really profound. The sage Sanat Sujata's teachings on death and liberation. This sounds fascinating.
It is. Vidura refers to this ancient revered sage, Sanat Sujata, known for immense wisdom and his seemingly radical teaching. Death does not exist.
Wow. Okay. That definitely catches your attention. Dhritarashtra must have been eager to hear more.
Absolutely. Facing the prospect of mass death in his family, he's naturally seeking understanding, maybe solace, in this idea.
So how does Sanat Sujata explain it? Death does not exist.
He explains that moha, delusion, is death, and moha, non-delusion, is immortality. It completely reframes death. It's not just physical cessation, but a state of ignorance, attachment to the impermanent.
So it's our own minds, our illusions that bind us to the cycle of birth and death. The focus shifts inward.
Precisely. Sanat Sujata says delusion leads to defeat for the asuras, while non-delusion leads to victory for the devas. It's an internal struggle within each of us.
He emphasizes that death, as we normally think of it, is a consequence of ignorance and attachment.
Right, that attachment keeps the cycle of birth, death, rebirth going.
But the wise, those who've conquered ignorance and desire,
They transcend this cycle. They overcome suffering. He describes kama, desire itself, as the darkness, the hell for beings, the root of so much pain.
so for the wise, death holds no fear because they see its illusory nature.
Exactly. They've moved beyond mortal perception. Sanat Sujata then points to atapa, austerity, as the foundation of the universe, the means to attain immortality. But he adds a caution.
Not all austerity is equal.
Right. Intention and manner matter. He lists 12 flaws that corrupt austerity, starting with anger, and 13 kinds of cruelty that undermine progress. True austerity needs inner purity, compassion.
He contrasts these with 12 eternal virtues of the ancestors, like truthfulness.
Yes. And he details 6 kinds of supreme tyaga, renunciation, including, interestingly, a lack of joy or attachment, even when gaining wealth. Also charity, detachment from desires. Renunciation is internal, not just external show.
He defines a true Afka Muni, a sage too.
Not just someone silent or living in a forest, but one who truly knows their own soul. And a Hakamana Hovayakarana isn't just a grammarian, but someone who understands and can articulate the real meaning of things.
And the culmination of all this.
Realizing the true self as pervading all beings. That's true knowledge, leading to liberation. And you can get there through various paths of Vedic study, inner wisdom. It's a powerful message of interconnectedness, our inherent potential for transcendence.
Building on that idea of inner conquest, the excerpts then talk about the path to self-realization, overcoming attachment while still living in the world.
Yes, the text highlights the achievement of those who conquer desires while living in the present. They endure hardships not for external reward, but to purify themselves, detach the soul from the body.
There's the concept of a spiritual birth, too.
Right, gained through a teacher's instruction. This birth is imperishable, unlike our physical one.
And the disciple's conduct is key.
Crucial. Reverence for the guru, purity, detachment from pride, diligent study, foundational principles for growth.
The text mentions the Nanakakut Paramakshara.
The supreme imperishable, the ultimate source and destination of all beings, the fundamental reality beneath everything.
And there's that powerful analogy of the body as a chariot.
Yes, the senses are the horses, the mind is the charioteer, driving towards the eternal supreme being.
But the supreme being can't be seen with ordinary senses.
No, it's realized through wisdom, a steadfast mind. That realization brings immortality.
The yogic path is described further.
The yogi perceives the supreme being within the sun, and ultimately sees even the sun absorb back into that ultimate reality.
An image of the swan.
Yes, the supreme being as a swan, not lifting one foot, which represents the whole world. The yogi gains a direct vision of this eternal Lord.
Ultimately, the inner self is attainable through yoga, but hidden from the deluded.
Exactly. It's a journey inward, to the core of consciousness, to universal reality. This deep spiritual context really sets the stage for understanding the Kurukshetra war, doesn't it? It's not just about land.
Absolutely, it adds layers. Now, as the momentum builds towards war, we see these ominous signs foreshadowing Duryodhana's downfall.
Yes, clear signs. Arjuna's renowned archery skill, the Pandavas' strong alliance with Virata, and just the sheer righteous anger burning in the Pandava camp because of all the injustices they've suffered.
The text paints a grim picture of Duryodhana witnessing his army's future devastation.
Utter confusion, bewilderment at the loss, and eventual, probably too late, remorse. It's the tragic result of his relentless wooden stay.
This foreshadowing really hammers home that principle. Actions have consequences. Adharma leads to ruin no matter how powerful it seems initially.
Yeah, definitely. Shifting back to the Pandavas, we see Yudhishthira preparing for war, choosing his commanders.
Dhritarashtra is still asking about Yudhishthira's reaction, still hoping for weakness, maybe?
It seems so. He asks about Yudhishthira's reaction to his army gathering, his war preparations, searching for any hesitation.
But Sanjara's response is firm.
Unwavering. He highlights Yudhishthira's joy at reclaiming his kingdom, the fearlessness of Bhima, Arjuna, the twins. There's this palpable determination.
Arjuna's readiness is emphasized again, consulting with Krishna.
Yes, showing the importance of divine guidance and careful strategy.
And Bhima's past victory over Jarasandha is mentioned.
Right. Achieved with Krishna's help, highlighting Bhima's strength and their powerful alliance. It's even noted that Krishna's whole clan, the Andhaka Vishnus, avoided Jarasandha's control because of Bhima's power. Adds context to Bhima's role.
So the Pandavas seem resolute, but Duryodhana is still clinging to confidence.
Stubbornly so. He expresses faith in Bhishma, Drona, Kripa, Karna, assumes their loyalty is absolute because of past ties. He clings to the idea that dying in battle for what he thinks is dharma is noble.
But there's a hint of doubt underneath.
A flicker, maybe?
Mm-hmm.
He worries about who will face the Pandavas, noting Bhishma might hold back initially against kin.
And he acknowledges that while his warriors know how to fight, none have Arjuna's consistent record of victory against top opponents.
That subtle acknowledgement shows the cracks in his confidence. He then asks about Yudhishthira's plans for his 7 Akshohinis, betraying his anxiety about their strength.
And Sanjaya just reports back Yudhishthira's joy, his brother's fearlessness, further chipping away at Duryodhana.
Exactly. The stage is set. One side fueled by righteousness and divine support, the other relying on flawed judgment and dwindling hope.
The preparations ramp up as Arjuna gets his divine chariot ready, a powerful symbol of his readiness.
A potent image, yes, underscores his pivotal role and the almost supernatural nature of the conflict.
Yet, despite everything, Duryodhana still challenges Vidura's prediction of Pandava victory.
He does, stubbornly clinging to his distorted view. He questions the basis, saying, we're the same lineage, same land. He completely misses the point about dharma versus adharma being the real decider.
And he repeats his confidence in his allies, Bhishma, Drona, Kripa, Karna, Jayadratha, Samadatta, Ashwatthama.
Boasting that even Indra couldn't beat them. It just shows his profound lack of self-awareness, dangerously underestimating his opponents.
That arrogance is his defining flaw, sealing his fate.
Absolutely. And the tension within the Kaurava camp itself is highlighted again with Bhishma's comments about Karna.
Right. Bhishma calls out Karna's compromised dharma.
Says Karna forfeited his dharma and merit when he lied to his guru, Parashurama, to get weapons, exposes that flaw in Karna's character deceit to get ahead.
And Duryodhana's reaction leads to Karna storming off.
Yes. Karna withdraws resentfully from the strategy talks. This internal friction, this resentment, further weakens their position.
It really shows the fractured nature of Duryodhana's support based on loyalty and self-interest, not shared dharma.
Precisely. Now, as war looms, Dhritarashtra turns to Sanjaya again, seeking deeper spiritual understanding, especially about Krishna.
He asks how Sanjaya knows Krishna is Lord of all worlds, lamenting his own ignorance.
Yes, he recognizes Krishna's status, but feels lost in his own darkness.
Sanjaya explains Krishna is the ultimate refuge, the path to liberation.
Stressing the need for single-minded devotion.
And he contrasts the suffering of the attached, stuck in the cycle of death under Yama,
with the liberating path of Dhanayana, true knowledge, leading to detachment and freedom.
Dhritarashtra pleads for the path to reach Hrishikesha Krishna, master of the senses.
Sanjaya then explains Krishna's divine nature. Unborn, Aja, self-luminous Udara, master senses Dhamma, hence Dhammadhara, also joyful, Rishika, connected to heaven and earth, Dalva Prithvi, hence Vasudeva, underscoring Krishna's supreme, all-encompassing reality.
Even amidst all this, we get glimpses of Duryodhana's arrogance again, contrasted with Gandhari's sorrow.
The text reminds us of his malicious joy when the Pandavas lost everything in the dice game, shows his flawed character.
And Gandhari, his mother, warns him about disobeying elders and predicts his defeat by Bhima. Tragic foresight.
Her words highlight the deep family divisions and the tragedy stemming from Duryodhana's adharma, which even his own mother sees and laments.
Dhritarashtra himself seems racked with regret, too, as war gets closer.
Yes, lamenting his son's adharma, his own blindness, literal and metaphorical.
Regretting ignoring Vidura's counsel, Sorrow over Draupadi's humiliation.
acknowledging Krishna's universal benevolence, even pleading for grace. A flicker of remorse.
And that longing to see Krishna again, even if his sight returns only briefly.
Poignantly underscores his dawning recognition of Krishna's divinity, the guidance he tragically rejected.
The personal stakes become incredibly sharp with Kunti's message to Yudhishthira via Krishna.
Kunti instructs Krishna to tell Yudhishthira his essential dharma protecting his people is waning due to inaction, urges him not to squander his lineage by failing to act.
She uses that analogy about a non-studying reader not understanding the Vedas.
Implying inaction makes him incapable of fulfilling his dharma. It's a powerful call to action for Yudhishthira, reinforcing the moral need to stand against dharma.
And then the complex, poignant exchange between Kunti and Karna.
Karna's initial reaction is harsh, resentful, accuses her of disgracing him by revealing his birth now, reaffirms loyalty to Duryodhana,
Kunti pushes back hard.
highlights his ingratitude, the adharma of siding against his own brothers. Her words get scathing, calling him worthless, impotent due to his lack of righteousness, urges him to abandon dharma, fight for justice.
She uses some stark analogies.
Stillborn child, the curse on a son who fails his parents, contrasts true manhood with living in fear, dependence.
Reminds him of Indra's glory defeating Vritrasura. Contrasts a righteous warrior's fate with the coward's.
Warns out kings favoring the wicked, ruining their lineage. Contrasts kings with wise sons versus foolish ones.
Says even kinship can't prevent disaster caused by adharma.
Her final plea is for him to uphold dharma, regardless of loyalty to Duryodhana. Karna, still loyal, makes that reluctant, fateful promise.
Not to kill any Pandava except Arjuna, setting up that tragic confrontation.
A small concession, maybe, but leaves the door open for immense bloodshed, underscores Karna's deep inner conflict.
Finally, Krishna relays Bhishma's words from the court of assembly to Yudhishthira, crucial insight from the enemy camp.
Krishna recounts Bhishma condemning Duryodhana's persistent adharma, his refusal to heed counsel. Bhishma, despite his loyalty, slams Duryodhana's self-destructive path.
Bhishma even warns of the Kuru dynasty's destruction because of Duryodhana's actions.
A chilling prediction from a respected elder. But in contrast, Bhishma praises the Pandavas' virtues, righteousness, dharma, integrity, contrasting them sharply with the Kaurava's envy and malice.
And Bhishma predicts the Pandavas' ultimate victory due to their adherence to dharma.
This affirmation must have been incredibly significant for Yudhishthira, powerful reassurance, reinforcing the moral basis of their cause. Coming from Bhishma, it bolsters their resolve immensely.
Heartened by this, Yudhishthira takes decisive action, focusing on army leadership.
Fully committed now, he identifies the key warriors ready to sacrifice themselves. Drupada, Virata, Drishtadumna, Shikandi, Satyaki, Chikitana, Bhimasena. Their skills are highlighted.
Sahadeva gives his opinion on leadership, seeking consensus.
Yudhishthira agrees, valuing collective wisdom. Appoints 7 leaders for the army divisions.
And, crucially, names Drishtadumna as supreme commander.
A significant choice, especially given Drishtadumna's birth and destiny linked to Drona's fall. Adds another layer of strategic and symbolic weight to their preparations. With leaders chosen, resolve strengthened by dharma and divine support, the Pandavas stand ready.
Well, that was a truly deep dive into a remarkably rich set of Mahabharata excerpts you sent us. We covered an immense amount of ground.
We really did. From celestial battles, royal intrigues, all the way to these profound philosophical discussions on existence, dharma, death, war.
We explored these enduring themes. The complexities of dharma, the need for peaceful conflict resolution, the burdens of leadership, ancient views on death and immortality, and that path towards self-realization, overcoming attachment.
It's quite remarkable, isn't it, how these ancient teachings still resonate so strongly today, offering insights into human nature, the consequences of our choices, the power of righteousness.
Which brings us, I suppose, to a final thought for you, our listener. Which of these many insights resonated most deeply with you? How might these ancient stories, this timeless wisdom, apply to your own life or your understanding of the world around you?
It's definitely worth pondering. And we really encourage you to explore the Mahabharata further. The characters, the situations, the moral complexities there are just countless layers waiting to be uncovered.
Absolutely. Thank you for joining us on this deep dive.